So is this presentation going to be available online to view and stuff? Or should we take pictures of things that seem
You can take pictures as long as you don't publish them. How's that?
just for our own reference?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, we're going to get started here again. I think we're about ready. I'll answer the question that was asked right at the very beginning, is are our slides available? No. A lot of what we've talked about in these various things, this recording might be available on the UVM extension website, but we don't actually give out our PowerPoints because we found at times in the past when we give out results of things in progress, somebody else they'll appear somewhere in a publication without any credit. And for us, it's kind of like, well, you know, we did 3 or 4 years of work on that and our name isn't on it. That's part of it. But the other part is nobody thanked the people who sponsored that research, which oftentimes is a good substantial amount of money. And the people who paid for it want to see that we thank them and acknowledge where the funds came from. So that's one reason we don't give it. And partly we like to be able to give the message because sometimes the message will get changed. If somebody takes just a slide, they can interpret it in a different way, and that's okay, but we'd like to give our interpretation first. Not that we don't want people to have lots of information, but there are a couple of reasons. A lot of what I'm going to show you, though, is already published. And you can go out there and get it, and go to this website right here, uvm.edu PMRC, and you'll find a lot of it. If you can't find it, ask me. The other place you can get it is brand new site called mapleresearch.org. If you have anything to write on, write that down. mapleresearch.org. And that site is operated by the North American Maple Syrup Council because a year ago, we put all our research on our website, and other places that do research on maple put it on their websites, or not. And so it gets a little hard to find them. You gotta go to Cornell, and you gotta go to Proctor, maybe Yale, maybe Harvard, maybe Sanitation, maybe some other site in Canada, and you gotta go around and hunt and peck for all this different stuff. So we got funding to come up with a database for all sorts of resources for maple producers. And so it could be a paper, it could be a PowerPoint, it could be a video, it could be an Excel spreadsheet. All these things can go into one, and you can go in and you can search. So you can search for sanitation, or you can search for Proctor Maple Research Center, and it'll give you whatever you're actually looking for. But that's where we're kind of directing people at this point. Okay. So we're going to get started on sanitation. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. I've talked about it before, but a lot of this work that I'm going to talk about, I've worked on, Dr. Abby has worked on at the Proctor Center. A lot of this particular work, we collaborated with Steve Childs at the Cornell Maple program. And, I'd like to get Steve out here one of these years before he retires. He's a wealth of information. You need to know anything about confections in maple. We don't even bother doing the research because Steve knows way more about any type of maple confection than we'll ever know. So he has a really, really good manual out there called the Maple Confection Notebook. And so Steve is a good resource for a lot of different things as well. But today I'm going to talk this morning. I'm going to talk about dropping Spout sanitation for high production. And boy, this projector, can you even read that? No, I can barely read it myself, so not much we can do about it. It's the projector that they have here at school. So they tried, they shut them out, but it's that set of lights right there that's doing it, I think. And I don't have any control over them. There are 3 groups of factors that really affect high sap yield. I talked about a number of them in the previous presentation, but they come down to things about the tree. So the size and health of the tree, how fast it's growing, the number of taps you put in, how deep the tap holes are. And then there's vacuum. Vacuum's a lot simpler. The more you pull, the more you get. It doesn't hurt the tree. But then you start refining it a little more, and you start talking about system design and layout, how you install the system, how you operate the system, how you maintain the system. So those are important. And then the third really big category is sanitation. And sanitation really comes out of spout and tubing replacement or tubing cleaning. Those are the two major approaches. So with sanitation, the goal is really to improve sap yield and quality, but at the same time do it in a way that producers can realize a net profit from doing it. So, as I said, two different ways. One is replacement, and that's what we focused on for many, many years, where the idea is to put uncontaminated material near the tree. So when we talk about that, it's new drops, new spouts, check valves, anything where we're putting new plastic close to the tree. And the closer we get it, the better. The spout has the biggest influence on sanitation that's there, but it can't kind of fix it all. It's kind of, you think about it in a way that if you wash your hands, but from your wrist up, you're covered with dirt or cow manure or something, well, you're kind of clean, but you're not entirely clean. But your hands that you're touching stuff with are the most important thing. The further out you get from that, the drop line is pretty important. Once you get into the lateral line with 5/16 inch tubing, not really that critically important. Has a little effect, has a much bigger effect than 3/16 inch tubing. And by the time you hit the main line, there is a slight effect that we can detect, but it's so small that you're not going to go out and change your drop lines every few years, or your main lines every few years. So we're not really going to talk about that too much. And it probably isn't worth going out there doing a lot of cleaning that just costs you a lot of money and takes a lot of materials and means you get a rinse or something like that. So we really focus on the spout and the drop line as being the problem locations where we can solve the issue to a substantial degree. So we have replacement, we understand that really well, we'll talk about that. And then we also have cleaning or sanitation of the system itself. And the idea there is to reduce contamination of the spout, reduce contamination of the drop line through the removal of the debris. So that's the cleaning effect, and then the reduction in the microbe level, which is the sanitizing effect. So this is, you can kind of connote this to washing your hands with water and using soap. If you do those two things, that's what it takes to get it really nice and clean. And we know this because we've studied what happens in different tubing systems over many, many years, well over a decade now. And what we know is that if you start with a brand new system, you're really happy, making good production, but depending on the way you achieve sanitation, you get different results. When we first started this, cleaning with air and water was the major method people used, and what we found was that production with that drops off pretty fast. So after about 5 or 6 years, you're making, down only about 60% of the amount of syrup that you would make with a brand new system. So the other way people were thinking about doing it was to replace the spouts every year, and if you do that, that's this green line, and it helps. It's better than cleaning with air and water or not cleaning at all, but it doesn't sort of get us all the way back up to this line up here that we'd like. The best way to do it would be to replace the entire system every year. That's too expensive. But if we focus on just replacing the drops every year, we can get really, really high production and maintain it with a slight drop off over time due to the influence of lateral and the main line, but we're going to ignore that. Problem with that method, though, is it's just too expensive. Too much work, costs too much. So what other types of things we can do? Well, replace spouts might be one. Maybe we can replace spouts and combine that with periodic replacement of the drop lines. And that's this yellow line, where first year everything's brand new, second year you put a new spout in, third year you put a new spout in, fourth year you replace the drop. And once you do that, you jump right back up to this line, and then the next year you replace the spout, next year you replace the spout, and then you replace the drop again. So, and then the other way to do it was to replace use check valves, which get you both the replacement of the spout effect and the check valve effect, which will get you close to this, but not all the way up there either. There is some These things aren't perfect. They never will be, no way it is, but it gets you fairly close. So we had done a lot of work early on looking at different ways to clean tubing, and we sort of focused on this replacement strategies because they seem to work better. But then after we were done all the research, there were still questions about cleaning, so we went back and wanted to do that too. So we started this project looking at tubing cleaning with the objective of looking at how different cleaning practices might be able to increase sap yields over time versus a replacement. It was a study that was done at the Proctor Center and also done at Cornell. So we did very, very similar things so we could compare results. In some cases we did things a little different, but our results should be pretty comparable. The funding for this mostly came through the Northeast Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education, or NESARE. And so all of this information, if you go to the NESARE website or you just go to mapleresearch.org, you'll find it. So we ended up comparing both cleaning and replacement treatments and combinations of cleaning and replacement. We did it for several years with Steve Childs at the Cornell Iron Ore Forest and at the Proctor Center, and then we went on to this research and education phase, which we're technically is done, but we're still talking about it, so we have all the results for it. One of the very first things we wanted to do when we first started looking at tubing cleaning was find out what are people doing. So that would give us a clue on different things to try and things that might be working. So when we did that, this was a survey on Maple Trader and Sugarbush Info, mostly of US producers, some Ontario producers. Found 16% weren't doing anything. They were just pulling spouts. That was it. Another 20% were using, at that time, something called dry cleaning, which is pulling spouts with a vacuum on. Suck all the liquid out of the lines. 3% were using fermented sap, pull spouts with liquid still in them. Cap them, leave them, really stinks. Smells really bad. But the idea was this would turn to vinegar and would kill anything in the lines. 26% were using water. And we know if we go back a couple of graphs from here, water was the one that really dropped off fast. So it wasn't, we know this one wasn't very effective. Pretty sure this one isn't any more effective than this, and this one isn't any more. So none of these here are effective. We're pretty sure of that. So 2/3 of the people were using something that wasn't effective. Another 4% were using isopropyl alcohol. Hopefully they were all producers from Canada, because isopropyl alcohol is illegal in the US to use in maple tubing systems. There was one producer, only shows up as 0%, but one producer was using ethanol, hopefully in his lines, not in himself. 5% using hydroperoxide, one producer using paracetic acid, 2% using pan acid, some 1% another acid, 13% still using chlorine, bleach. And finally, 11% were doing other. Well, we don't know, we probably don't want to know, we didn't ask. But what this tells us is if 2/3 of the people are doing stuff that doesn't work, and everybody else is just trying a whole bunch of different things, there isn't one thing out there that was doing a really good job. If there was, most people would be using it. Everybody would have adopted it already. So, but it did give us some information on things to try. So we started with unclean tubing, and we tried different ways of cleaning it. So this is a number of microorganisms. This is 100% unclean. There's 100% microorganisms. We have a way of actually measuring how much is there. And we cleaned some drops and spouts with water, and we knocked back the populations quite a lot, 96%. The water actually did a pretty good job getting out the vegetative stuff, most of it, except the stuff that's clung to the walls, that's really sticky biofilms. Problem is, once you get sap back in there, it just grows right back immediately.
Is that after season or pre-season when you clean them?
This is pre-season. We collected these drops that had been out in the field, had not been cleaned in any way except dry cleaning. We sucked the liquid out of them. And so we had lots and lots of these, and we cleaned them in different ways, and then measured how many microbes were there. So then we used Clorox. Clorox did pretty darn well. There's almost nothing left there, just a tiny, tiny bit. Isopropyl alcohol, it's right there. Ethanol, well, it turns out microbes like ethanol just about as much as humans do. Hydrogen peroxide did okay. This is a fairly strong concentration of hydrogen peroxide. Turbonet was a product out there that's used a lot in various industries. Premium peroxide is a combination of hydrogen peroxide and para-acetic acid, acetic acid being vinegar. So that was one out there that was sold in the maple industry, so we thought we'd give that a try. So we picked unclean. We want to start with Clorox, isopropyl, because isopropyl is used a lot in Canada, and we wanted to test it. We can test it, we can get permits to do it. Premium peroxide is another one that we tried because it seemed to do pretty well. And then we did water, and then over here with no bar at all is brand new tubing. Brand new tubing essentially has nothing in it. Not going to use the word sterile, because sterile is something completely different, but it doesn't have a whole lot of detectable microorganisms in it. If it's brand new, it's been kept clean. So these are the treatments we use. I just told you about the used drop lines, bleach clean. We actually used a bleach that wasn't sodium hypochlorite, it was calcium hypochlorite, which oftentimes is used as a pool cleaner. We get a hold of some food grade calcium hypochlorite and use that. The idea was hopefully it would be less attracted to squirrels. Then we use the peroxide, the premium peroxide formulation, isopropyl. For replacement methods, we tried a new spout, check valve spout, drop line, which includes a new drop line, a new T, and a new spout. Now we're always asked about why do we include a T when we include a drop line. It's because we found over many, many years that cutting out a T, having the T already made, bringing it out in the woods, cutting it out, putting it back together with a two-handed tool is very fast. If you try to cut it off, the drop line off, put it on, you do two things, it takes a long time. And secondly, you always make little scores in the T, and it leaks. It might not leak at 15, 20 inches of vacuum. You're at 25, 27 inches of vacuum, it leaks. So then we spend even more time going back, finding the 25% that leaked, and replacing. So it's just far, far cheaper in the long run when you start looking at labor to replace a T right from the start than to go out and find all the leaks afterwards. So those are the replacement strategies. Then we did cleaning with bleach and a new spout, cleaning with peroxide and a new spout, cleaning with isopropyl and a new spout, and rinsing with water and replacing the spout. You can't read this anyway, but just some of the methods we use at Proctor and at Cornell. Really the major difference is that at the Proctor Center, we did it the way that a lot of producers are telling us they were doing it at the time, which was to go out with a vacuum on, stick it in the container for just a second or so, suck in a small amount, 15, 20 milliliters of liquid into the drop line, cap it, and you're done. It's clean. The way that, and that we call the short contact method, because that cleaner, the sanitizer, is touching the tubing for maybe a second at best. When you read the labels on these things, they almost all say contact time of 5 to 10 minutes required. 1 second is not anywhere close to 5 or 10 minutes, but that was the way people were doing it, so we wanted to test it. The way Steve did it was he either brought his drops in, immersed them in a cleaning solution, and then rinsed them and brought them back out in the woods. Or in subsequent years, he flooded the entire system with a cleaning solution and left it there for a few days, went back out and flushed it with water. So Steve had a long contact time compared to our short contact time. This is the way it looks. This is just the end tree and a chamber attached to it. There's a lateral line that goes out. There were 3 trees attached to that lateral line. Each of them had the same type of treatment that we were studying for that block. So they might be, this block might be no cleaning at all. We start with used tubing, and then other other chambers might be connected to things with a new spout or a new check valve or clean with bleach. So we had 44 of these, so there were 4 for each of those 11 treatments, 3 trees on each of those 44 lines. We did this in 2014, 2015. We measured how much sap there was each day, drain it, reset it for the next day's run. At the same time, we like to do similar types of studies in different ways to find out if the methods are affecting the results. So we found 110 trees. So we had the same 11 treatments. We had 10 trees per treatment, but instead of multiple trees on a chamber, we had 1 tree per chamber. So a tree might have a new spout, or it might be clean with bleach. And so we could compare the results we were getting from our 2 different methods of doing it and see whether or not they were consistent. We did studies at the same time looking at how long it took us to clean these things, how long it took us to put a new spout on, how long it took to make a new drop and to put the new drop out in the woods. So we had good measurements of how much labor, how much time it actually took to do this. So these are results for 2014, 2015 at the Proctor and Cornell. So across the bottom, this is used spout on a used tubing, used drop line, both of them 6 years old on average. And you can see that produced about 18 gallons of sap. So pretty good. We have good vacuum yields. So even on used tubing, we were able to get pretty decent yields. So then I want to talk about the cleaning. So these are bleach clean spouts with bleach clean drops, isopropyl clean spouts with isopropyl drops, peroxide. So you can see with bleach, we got a good increase in sap yield. Isopropyl, we did have an increase, not quite as good as bleach. Peroxide, again, same type of results. So overall, cleaning can increase yields, with bleach being a little better than everything else. If, though, we simply put a new spout on a used drop, we got 26 gallons of sap. So more, a little bit more than if we cleaned it with bleach. If we use a check valve on a used drop, we got 29 gallons of sap. And if we put a brand new drop in there, we got 31 gallons. So that's the usual progression. New spout will do better than a used system. Check valve will do better than a new spout. New drop entirely will do better than anything else in terms of yield. If we jump over to the cleaning and replacement, a new spout had been, a brand new spout on a bleach clean drop produced about 26 gallons of sap, which really isn't a whole lot of just cleaning the whole thing with bleach. So we didn't gain a whole lot by putting a new spout in there. Same type of things, we might have gained a little bit with a new spout on IPA, new spout with peroxide, and this is new spout with water. We actually did get a little bit of gain cleaning with water compared to a used drop. So overall, what we see is that the methods that seem to work the best in terms of yield tend to be the replacement strategies, maybe with bleach cleaned. Adding a new spout onto this really didn't help a little bit, but not a lot. So that's just the yield. We also have to look at the cost of these things because they all have a different cost. Even doing nothing costs you something because you could go out there and tap the tree. So it costs you a little bit, so that's the basic cost of doing nothing but tapping the tree. If you clean them with bleach, you have to go out there and clean. Then you have either to let some sap run on the ground to remove the salt, or you need to flush with water. So this cost subtracts out the cost of doing those 2 types of things. It includes, the labor to do that, and we can talk about the labor, talk about the rates and the various numbers we use, and I'll tell you in a little while why we don't have to. But some people argue that you don't need to include the cost of labor because they're not paying themselves. Well, if you're not out there cleaning, you might be able to do something else, like add more taps, find leaks, do other types of things. So it's costing you one way or another. If you're not doing that, then that time that you spent, if you are doing that, the time you spent could have been used to do something else. So I had this really interesting exchange with a guy down in southern Vermont one time when I was doing a presentation on this. He jumped up and said, I don't pay myself. You can't include labor on there. You subtract all that out. I was like, well, yeah, that's your opinion. Economists say something different every time you do these kind of things. Any economist will include labor costs in this. Well, you don't need to. I'm not paying myself. Okay. I'll show you how you can subtract that out. We went a little bit longer, and I said something else, and he jumped back up again. And he said, I can't do that. It takes too much time. Okay, you're right. Yeah.
Because from southern Vermont.
yeah, below the Mason-Dixon line. It's about Montpelier, right? Or maybe a little north of Montpelier. So you can have a lot of interesting arguments with people about various costs, and I'm really not interested in that, but I'd be happy to nod and smile. So the cost of IPA these are pretty close to each other. Cost of a new spout is essentially just add on the cost of a spout to that. Cost of a check valve costs a little bit more than a new spout alone. New drop though, even though it got the best yield, costs you quite a bit more. So that's why it jumps right up there. These other things combine the cost of the cleaning along with the cost of the new spout. So the costs for doing these types of things are pretty high, except for this one, which is water. Because with water, you don't need to rinse when you're done. And with water, probably isn't costing you much of anything. So water cleaning doesn't really cost you a lot. And so it does have some benefits there. So if we look at all these costs, and it's kind of hard to combine the two, but then we look at the net profit. So if we take the yield, we multiply that by how much the sap is worth, and it's worth different amounts to different people. If you're bulking your syrup, it might be worth a certain amount. If you're making it all into candy, it's going to be worth a lot more. So these are all just averages. These are mostly represent bulk syrup, but it's going to be different based on how you're actually selling your syrup. So for just doing nothing, you might get, if you get a really good vacuum, you might get a net profit of about $4, not counting all the other costs of the tubing system or the vacuum, but just the used system, just looking at the doing nothing, you're going to be close to about $4 a tap as a net profit. If you clean with bleach, you can boost that up to about $4.86. IPA, a little bit better than used. Peroxide, not quite as good. So bleach turns out to be pretty good as a cleaning strategy if that's what you're going to do. It turns out to be the best, except for the squirrels. When we start factoring in squirrels, that's a real wild card. We don't know if you're clean with bleach, but then spend all your time fixing tubing, then it isn't going to be a net profit at all. If instead you go to a new spout with an unused drop, your net profit goes up to about $5.88. So you're getting almost $2 more with just going to a new spout. Check valve, you bump that up a little bit more. A new drop on a lateral line system turns out to be a little bit less on average because of the cost and the labor involved in way out there. So we included the cost of buying the materials, which we did for all these, buying the materials, making the tea, bringing the tea out and installing it in the woods, and removing the drop back to be discarded. So when you add all those up, then even though you get better yields, your net profit drops off. Net profits for cleaning and replacement strategies aren't any better than cleaning with bleach. Might be just a hair better for isopropyl and for peroxide, but because you're having to pay for a new spout and putting it in there, it isn't really adding a whole lot to it. So again, what stands out replacement strategies. And any of these replacement strategies tend, most of the time, to do better than cleaning and replacement or cleaning alone, with a possible exception of bleach being a close contender. Same graph, we just subtracted off the cost of doing nothing to make that 0. So again, replacement strategies tend to beat most other things other than bleach is kind of getting up into the same territory. So that was 2 years worth of research. Well, Steve and I had done this for a really, really long time. It turns out we've been doing this since 2009, looking at all of these different effects. This is for 5/16" tubing in spouts. 3/16 is a totally different animal that I'll go over in a few minutes. This graph, again, you can argue about the values for labor and stuff. And in this case, we're going to assume 15 gallons per tap, and we're going to assume your sap is worth 51 cents per gallon. So if you're retailing a lot of your syrup, these numbers are going to go up. If your yields are higher, these numbers will go up. If your yields are lower, say you're on gravity, these numbers are going to drop down by half. So this is sap yield improvement versus different types of sanitation treatments, averaged over lots and lots of studies. These are all the studies over a 10-year time period. So there are going to be some years that these tend to be good, and these strategies vary from year to year. Some years we see huge effects due to sanitation. Some years we see very little effects. So these are averaged over many years, and can't guarantee you're going to get these results in any one year, but over time, this is what the tendencies will be. This is improvement over doing nothing. So doing nothing includes not cleaning, dry cleaning, water cleaning, fermented sap, all the things that we know aren't terribly effective. If you put a new spout in, on average, year after year after year, you're going to net about $1 more a year by doing it, and get about a 32% improvement in yield. If you use a check valve, every year a check valve includes both check valve spout, and you get the new spout effect because you're putting a new spout in each year. You end up with about a 67% improvement and a little over $2 for net profit. So it's about double the profit of a new spout. If we parse out the separate effects of the check valve and the spout, which we can do because of the way these studies are done, we find that this is a line that the new spout alone contributes about a third of the total effect of using a check valve spout. So people might say, some people might say, well, if you use a new spout, it's the same as using a check valve. It isn't. It'll get you about half the net profit. It'll get you about a third the amount of sap, but it comes at a slightly lower cost. So, $1 to $2. Yep.
Check valve spout, whole spout versus going on a stub.
This includes both. It includes studies from both using the stubby and from using the full spout. So it's hard to separate those out.
If it's including both, are they both pretty much the same?
They're really close. The stubby, when we look at the stubby itself, and most of these studies were done with a black nylon spout that used to be made. They also make now the clear polycarbonate version, so that's going to be slightly different. With a black spout, it's probably, the black adapter, check valve adapter, probably performs slightly less than the polycarbonate one piece, slightly.
Is that because of the extra heat that goes into the black spout?
Yep. It's that, and that there is this connection between the check valve and the stubby itself, the physical connection, that's closer to the tree than it is with the full spout. And the closer we get to the tree, then there's some effect going on. And again, these things aren't perfect, so there is a very, very small stubby effect that ignore it for the most part, but it is there, we can detect it, but it's very,
Well,
very
it's a
tiny.
lot cheaper than putting a new spout on every time.
That's the thing, it's cheaper in terms of labor to put it in. And so we haven't had the new polycarbonate check valve adapter out long enough to include it in a lot of these studies.
The stubby you can just push on by hand and it locks onto the spout, so you
Yep.
just hit the spout.
Yeah, you know, the issue, you know, when these check valves first came out, the first batch of them we did were clear polycarbonate because we wanted that for research. And that's not the way they were sold. They were sold as nylon. The reason they weren't sold that way is because if you put a clear polycarbonate adapter on a stubby, it is darn hard to get it off. Really, really hard. So the decision was made to go to nylon so you could actually separate them. And they're still hard to get off, but not almost impossible. But people asked so much for that clear polycarbonate adapter that leaders started making them. And I don't have any decision-making ability in leader, but they started making them after a period of time because they were asked so much.
So which one do you think has more flexibility? Will one of them oblong to the hole if it's oblong a little bit? to seal it better?
Typically polycarbonate sticks in the tree better.
So that holds it for frost.
Yep.
But we found some of them will oblong better, seal better,
Which type?
the white ones.
The white ones. White ones or clear ones?
White.
Okay.
Clear is a harder plastic.
Yeah.
It will not flex
Yeah.
as much as the white one.
They don't make a white they don't make a white check valve, so I guess I can't speak to that at all.
Yeah,
To dig in on drop replacement, did any of these studies look at not full T replacement, but connector replacement? You would assume that you would save money on connectors versus T's, and you would avoid that mooring.
So if you use like a quick disconnect,
Not a quick disconnect, but say you cut your drop line up 5 inches, then you have a 35, whatever, 40-inch drop line, then every 3 years or so, you would cut a connector just a regular.
no, we haven't looked at that, and I know Steve was interested in that. The question really being how much of a drop line replacement do you need to get the effect of replacing the drop line? I don't know that there really is a good answer for that.
Do you see anything negative with that connector being in the drop area?
Only that it's another place for leaks. Any connection you put in there is a place for leaks, and quick disconnects tend to work okay until you put them under any kind of strain. And once you put them under a strain, they don't last quite as well.
Are the adapters just disposable, or do people clean them every year?
Some people try to clean them, and Steve has done a lot of work trying to clean them. He's like boiled them in oil, the dust speck from Horton here's a who kind of thing. He tries boiling oil, he tried all sorts of crazy things, and they just don't work. Part of that is
Those are
because,
disposable, most of them.
yeah, and the reason is because that ball itself gets a biofilm that develops on it. And even if you make them really, really clean, not sterile afterwards, you're not going to remove that debris that's on the ball. And so the ball isn't going to seep as well. So every time you reuse them, you're going to get slightly less efficient seeding and more failure. So they're really designed to be used, and that ball is a specific ball density and size and everything. So I'm going to keep going. I'll try to answer questions a little bit later, but I just don't want to run over time. Okay, so I think we ended up there. So if we jump up to drop, replacing the drop, you actually have the drop line and the spout effect going on at the same time. You get slightly higher yields. So we see that in all of our studies that typically the best is achieved by replacing a drop. And the spout contribution to that is again about 1/3 to the total overall effect. And that if you have an old drop that you put on if you have a new drop that you put on an old system, on average, you tend to get about a 229, 230 improvement in net profit. But you don't do that every year. You don't put a old drop line or a new drop line in an old system. So what you tend to get is you get that in the very first year. The next year, your yield will drop off if you don't replace the drop line, and the next year it'll drop off again, and it ends up down here again because you're just replacing the spout. So if you're replacing the drop line, depending on the interval, you tend to get an average net yield or net profit of about $1.66. So it's down in this range somewhere. Bleach, on the other hand, I mentioned there's a short contact method, and this is the short contact method here. You basically end up a wash. You don't help yourself, you don't hurt yourself, you get more sap, but it costs you the same amount to get that extra sap that you end up getting. But if you do a long contact time method, you actually can boost your yields right back up to about the same as replacing a brand new drop on an old system. So bleach works really well, except for the squirrels. We're still looking into whether or not that new type of bleach that we've identified is attracted to squirrels. We haven't had problems with it yet, but we can't fully recommend this at this time. If you do bleach clean though, it's the most effective way to do it is to do it in the fall as it's getting cold. Most people think they want to clean in the spring. Well, it'll be nice and pretty, it'll look clean, but what you actually want it is to be really, really clean before you use it. So if you do it in the fall, before it gets to be freezing, not much before it gets to be freezing, you get everything really, really clean, and then it gets cold, so nothing will grow back. If you do it in the spring, then you flush it out, or it turns to salt, and then stuff will start to grow back in it. So this should be done in the fall, and then left until the spring. Peroxide, we're generally just not recommending anymore. You get a better result just putting a new spout on. I'm going to jump over to IPA. IPA is not legal in the U.S. If you use it, and they use it a lot in Canada, it tends to get about $1.50. It works pretty well. The problem with IPA is it doesn't kill spores, and that's why it isn't as good as bleach. Zatback is a method that we actually started experimenting with back in 2006. It's a silver impregnated plastic. Silver is naturally antimicrobial. And so if you have a little bit of silver in that spout, it will kill microbes. And so this company started making them. They tend to be a little bit better than a new spout. The idea behind this is you put a Zatback in, and it's supposed to be good for 3 years. So you use them the first year. First year, they actually do really, really well. Second year, not quite as well. By the third year, they're down to peroxide levels. The other issue I have with these is that you cannot use them in certified organic maple production. Not allowed. So if you're interested in maybe trying that technology, that's fine, as long as you're not organic certified. Strangely enough, it isn't because of the silver. The silver, they don't have any issues with organic people. It's the fact that the way they get the silver into the plastic is they mix it with a ceramic powder, and the powder is ground so fine it's considered a nanoparticle. And so organics don't like nano anything, and so they won't allow you to use the Zatback. So again, you're organic, you're not going to see it on the bag anywhere saying don't use this if you're organic. But if you are organic and you have these out in your woods and the inspector comes, well, hopefully they don't find them. So all of this is in an economic model of sap yield and replacement strategies that we have on our website. You can go in, plug in a lot of your numbers, your baseline yields, and the different things you want to try, and it'll tell you what would be expected in that type of situation. So you can grab that if you can't find it. Our website is undergoing a lot of restructuring, so if you can't find it, let me know and I'll be happy to send it to you. But one thing we often get questions about, and this has been published, is how often, if I'm going to replace my drop lines, how often do I do it? And so if you run a lot of different calculations on it and you look at the drop line replacement interval, how much net profit does that end up yielding you by replacing the drop line? And it comes out, if you do it every year, you really don't make too much because it just costs too much. But then as your drop line replacement interval increases, you tend to get this curve where doing it not often enough isn't good, doing it too often isn't good, but there's a sweet spot right in the middle. And that sweet spot very frequently falls out to about 3 years. So if you're not gonna use a check valve and you're replacing spouts, replacing drops about every 3 years tends to work out pretty well. The peak of this gets pushed off this way if your sap is worth a lot. So if you're retailing a lot of your syrup or making it into candy or some other value added, replacing your drops every 2 years might work out. Or if your drop cost is really low or your baseline yields are really high. So if you're getting 30 gallons per tap each and every year, it might be worth it to do it, drop line replacements every couple of years. If your sap isn't worth as much, you're bulking it all, or your drops cost too much because you're paying hired hands to make them instead of your kids, and your baseline yields are really low, so maybe you're on gravity or your vacuum's not very good, it's going to push that off to be maybe 4 or 5 years. You can look this up and you can use that calculator online to actually get these numbers, but 3 years tends to work out pretty well. Okay. So we're going to talk about a study that we started. Anybody here using 3/16? Okay, wow, quite a few. 3/16, great stuff. You're going downhill, you make vacuum. But we wanted to look at it, we use vacuum everywhere, so we wanted to look at how it does in a high vacuum operation. So we just went out and replaced, we had these 12 different plots, and we went out and replaced half of them with 3/16. We didn't set it up to optimize it, but it was all going downhill. The effect from gravity or 3/16 vacuum and pump vacuum is additive. So if you're getting 15 inches from your pump and you're getting 10 inches from going downhill, you get 25 inches. They add together, they work together. So we thought, well, we should be able to get, we're pulling 24, 25 inches, but we should be able to get another 3 or 4 inches out of this just by changing 5/16 over to 3/16. And this is the way we measure it. We have a whole bunch of little releasers that count up every time they dump, and they're very, very consistent. We know how much we get and when we get it over the season. And so this is what we got. 2015, when we did it, we ended up getting about 11% more sap than in the 3/16 than in the 5/16. 2016, we repeated it again. We ended up getting only 3% more than we did in the 5/16. We should be getting the same. We should be getting about 11, 12% each year because we're gaining an additional 2, maybe 2.5 inches, 3 inches. So we should always be getting 10, 11, 12% more from the 3/16 than the 5/16. First year we did, second year not quite as much. Third year we got less in the 3/16 than in the 5/16. And the fourth year we got less in the 3/16 than the 5/16. So something obviously is going on that's different in 3/16 than 5/16. So we wanted to look and see what might be happening. And if we look closer within each individual season, this is 2014 to 15, and we look at the difference between the flow in the 3/16 and 5/16, we find 3/16 started out really, really well. But over the season, it just kind of dropped off. So we were getting less and less and less additional sap. And the next year, it started about here and just kind of kept going down and down and down. And then the next year, it kept going down and down and down until it was negative, and then next year, down and down and more. So there's something going on as this tubing system ages. So we're thinking, wow, sanitation. We know all about sanitation. We can fix this. How do we fix this? Well, we decided we would try to fix it by using new spouts and by using 3/16 check valve spout, or check valve spouts on the 3/16 or new drops. So if we look first at this side, if we put a new spout in there, this is how much sap we got. Put a new check valve in there, we got a little more. Perfect. That's the way it should work. 5/16 new drop, we also put a check valve in, did a little bit better, but Now we jump over here. And keep in mind, each of these, this one should do about 10 or 12% better than that one. This one should do 10 or 12% better than that. This should do 10 or 12% better than that. The only thing that helped was putting in a new drop. A new drop, we got about 10 or 12% more. Great. So that solved the problem. But by putting a new spout in there, we didn't get 10 or 12% more. By putting a check valve in there, we definitely didn't get 10 or 12% more. So what's happening is the replacement type sanitation methods are working well in the 5/16, but the only thing that helped in the 3/16 was a new drop. What we're seeing, we think, after spending a lot of time looking at this and trying to look at the trends over the season, is that in 5/16 we're seeing exactly what we're very familiar with, sanitation issues. But over in the 3/16, what we're seeing is a combination of sanitation issues, because this actually got helped, but we're also seeing plugging. And it's plugging at the T's. It's plugging at any place there's a T, any place there's a union, there's plugs that start to build. And these things, they start to grow early in the season, but as the season goes on, the plugging gets bigger and bigger and bigger until eventually there's no sap flow beyond that plug. They're really, really hard to see because as soon as you open it up, the plug breaks. It's just kind of like a snotty kind of material, and as soon as you open up the tubing, it's sucked out. But it won't suck it out when the tubing is sitting there operating. It just plugs it off. It's like trying to pull a water bubble gum through a straw. You just can't do it. So with 3/16, we sort of have this problem. The only way we know for sure that will solve it now is to replace the T, including, or to replace the drop, including the T. New spout, new check valve will not solve the problem. They can't solve the problem of a plug at the T by putting a new spout in at the tree. You're working in the wrong area. It's a solution that isn't designed to fix that problem. So how are we going to solve that? Well, we're going to look at different ways to try to clean these by either flushing them with some type of sanitizer, perhaps in combination with putting new drops in periodically. In 2017 and 2018, we had converted some portions of our production woods to 3/16, and they had approached 3 years old at that time. In those sections that we converted over 3/16, the sap flow stopped about 2 weeks before the 5/16 stopped. Just absolutely stopped. Wasn't running anymore. So the project this summer was to pull out every bit of 3/16 and put 5/16 back in there. But we are continuing to do research on ways to solve this problem. 3/16 is really good. It's great for producers who either have low vacuum and want to supplement it with gravity vacuum, or don't have any way to get pump vacuum in there. So 5/16 sanitation, we know how to fix that. 3/16, we know the replacement methods aren't particularly good except for new drops. So we're going to look at different types of sanitizers. I know Steve Childs has found the same exact type of thing, and he's headed in the same direction, trying to find sanitizers that will remove this type of plugging. Yep.
In your 3/16 system, so the drops 3/16 as well?
In our systems that we tested, the entire system, if it was 3/16, was 3/16. We didn't try the combined 5/16 drop with a 3/16 inch lateral line. We don't think that having a 5/16 inch drop in there would help that much, because the problem is actually in the T, and the T is 3/16, so those connectors for the lateral line, so they're still going to plug up there.
Is there an explanation for why the check valve spout on the 3/16 was not as good a yield as the new spout?
Because those lines plugged up more, and it's just a random thing. Which lines you end up with maybe a percentage of your lines plugging up, and the check valve really had nothing to do with what was going to plug up. It was just a random
That was
thing.
just variability in study?
It was variability. If we had done 100 lines of each, then you'd see them all being kind of equal, but it was we wanted to try more things to try to fix the problem, and once we could focus in on the thing that seemed to be better, we would do more in-depth study with that. And so what we know now is those types of things that improve sanitation of the tap hole aren't going to help this problem.
Is there any way we can tell which lines to plug?
Repeat your question.
Is there any way we can gauge whether we're going to plug a line or not?
If you don't get much that. You can see, yeah, if you walk the lines and look at them, you can see the flow very frequently. You'll see the bubbles going down with the flow. And the way you see it most of the time is you walk up and you'll see there's a flow in the line, You get to a certain point where there's a union or a T, and above that there's no flow. And so if you go back and you cut that T out and you put a new T in, it's flowing again. That's a plug. Yeah, you can't see them is the problem. You just have to see what they're doing to the sap flow.
Are you doing any research or experimentation to try to find a sanitizer that has the advantages of Clorox without all the problems?
Yeah, we're continuing to use that calcium-based bleach, which is a calcium hypochlorite. The only thing is we needed several years to be able to tell whether or not, we know it's effective, it's just as effective as sodium-based bleach. The problem is it going to be attractive to squirrels? And the only way we can do that is to compare how much damage there is in those sections of the woods we've cleaned versus those that we haven't cleaned. And that just takes some time. Yeah, it is because it's a calcium-based product rather than a sodium. The element that is problematic to trees is sodium. Plants that grow in salt water do fine with sodium. Trees, they don't really care for sodium much at all. Maple trees turns out really like calcium a lot, so this probably isn't going to be a big problem. We still don't want to spread a lot of them around because chlorine, again, isn't something that's an issue, but we don't think it'll be quite as environmentally bad as bleach.
How about when it's injected? Is there harm to the environment? The way we clean, we inject it in, so there's really not much getting around each tree. And when we're done, we suck it out back down into the. Yeah, but I mean, when you discharge it, over the bank or wherever.
It's in the driveway. It's in the driveway. There's plenty of calcium chloride that gets spread on roads.
And that never gets into the street, I mean, especially with big outfits that you don't see that as a problem.
Yeah, well, we don't know. We don't know.